Good afternoon. Today we're going to look at some additional troubleshooting issues relating to the AQUAS electric shower heater. And today we're going to focus particularly on some issues relating to stability of temperature, either too much hot water, too little cold water, difficulty in creating a balance, and those issues specifically relate to the stabilizer or balancing valve, which we can find located behind the volume control handle. So again, in order to look at that particular valve, we need to remove the cover first. So before we do anything or any type of servicing on the electric shower, for maximum safety, let's cut the electric supply, and once cut, we can recheck the on-off button to make sure that there is nothing coming through the shower. So we can now safely remove the cover. So here we can see the balancing valve, and here we can see that when we rotate this to the maximum anti-clockwise position, we have the maximum amount of cold water that can enter the shower, and when you turn it fully clockwise, this will allow the maximum amount of hot water into the shower. But again, for the purposes of this video, we're going to assume that there are some issues internally with the balancing valve which may be impacting the stability of the temperature of the shower. So let's remove the balancing valve in order to look inside. So firstly, we need to remove these 4 screws at the front of the balancing valve. So let's very carefully try and do this. We just have to be particularly careful because we've got some wires in close vicinity to the balancing valve, so do take care when doing this maintenance job. So now we've removed the screws, and just before we prise the balancing valve forward and take it out of the housing, you can note that there is a raised section, a raised square section on top of the balancing valve, which would indicate that this is in the top position. So it's important that when we take it out and we replace the balancing valve, we put it back in exactly the same position. So now we can gently prise the balancing valve forward, and it should come out quite easily. And again, you'll see inside it's left an O-ring there, so what we should do is also remove the O-ring. So let's have a look at the balancing valve in detail. So here we have the balancing valve, and what we can see here is that we have an adjuster pin, and when we rotate it anti-clockwise, the pin is inside, and as we rotate it externally clockwise, you will see that this gap appears, which will allow hot water into the balancing valve. And if we continue to rotate clockwise, we can then remove the adjuster pin. And what we usually find with some instability of temperatures is that the water wasn't flushed carefully at the time when the electric shower was installed, and you can usually find some lime scale or some other debris from the water supply inside. So what we should do is we should clean the adjuster pin and make sure inside the balancing valve housing that there is no additional debris, and assuming that everything is now clean, we can now return the adjuster pin back to the balancing valve, and then in order to fix it back in, we rotate anti-clockwise. So everything now looks okay, and we can now safely return this to the shower. So before we actually put this back into the shower, it's important that we also return this O-ring externally so that we can mount it over the valve. And we need to make sure it's pushed home correctly to make sure that there is no leakage. And we now need to make sure that this square section at the top of the balancing valve goes back in at the top. So we can now gently return the balancing valve to the shower. and push carefully, and it's now back seated correctly. So we will now fix the screws back into the balancing valve. Okay, so all of the screws are now safely back in and the balancing valve is reseated into the shower. Now, what's important before we put the cover back on and turn the electricity back on, we should just check to make sure that there is no leakage from the balancing valve. So we can turn the electric supply on temporarily, and it's quite safe because this is plastic, so we can then turn the shower on and allow the water to run through the shower just to make sure that there is no leakage from the balancing valve. And assuming that everything is now okay, we should now cut our electricity supply again, turn the shower off, and we can now safely refit the cover. So that resolves hopefully the issues that you've encountered with the balancing valve and any instability of temperature, and I really hope that helps resolve your problem. So do check out some of our additional troubleshooting videos, which you can find on our AQUAS website at www.aquasshower.co.uk.